Latinx Education Collaborative Community. My name is Edgar Palacios, and I am the founder of the LEC. I am so thrilled for today's gathering of our storytellers. This is such an important moment in our organization's growth and development. Since 2018, we've been working on increasing the representation of Latinx educators in K-12. And this is an initiative designed for us to hear directly from those folks doing the work on the ground every day in classrooms, ensuring that our community has a voice, ensuring that our kids are being taken care of, are being loved on, and of course, taught. And so, again, my name is Edgar Palacios, founder of the Latinx Education Collaborative, and I'm just thrilled to be here today. I want to thank a couple of people before I turn it over to our host this evening. First and foremost, I want to thank Luis Ortega with Storytellers for Change, our phenomenal partner in this work. I met Luis in 2019 prior to the pandemic, and I was amazed by his conviction and his deep understanding of the power of storytelling and what it does for our communities, what it means for our communities. I also want to thank our host, Ivan Ramirez, who is our Director of Digital Experience, but really he's our Chief Storytelling Officer. And so I want to welcome him to the stage. Ivan, how are you doing today? I can't hear you just yet, but that's okay.
I always do that.
One thing that we've learned is that if people can't hear you, you can't storytell. So
you can't storytell. No, but I'm doing good. Thank you for that amazing introduction. Yeah, Luis was great with our storytellers, and I'm excited for everyone to listen to these stories.
Awesome. But I have one question for you, Ivan.
Yeah.
What is your one takeaway from this experience?
Latinos need to be in community. When we were there, we felt embraced. We used that word of acompañado. So that is my takeaway. We felt really acompañados with each other.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you sharing that, and I appreciate your leadership on this effort. And so I'll kick it off to you.
Okay. I just saw a comment. Look at that comment. Okay, we'll see you later, Edgar. Thank you. Okay, everybody. Thank you for being here with us. We are honored to welcome you to our Expresión Storytelling Showcase, the Latinx Education Collaborative and Storytellers for Change. We have created this fellowship based on the belief, like Edgar said, in the power of our stories, of Latinx educators. Because when we unlock the power of our stories, new landscapes of possibilities, hope, and equity will flow through our schools and communities. So that was our goal, and we hopefully have achieved that, and we'll achieve that now that we start going back to schools in August. The Expresión Storytelling Fellowship is driven by the belief in the power of our stories of Latinx educators and youth. Our narratives carry precious wisdom that can help us unleash a movement of possibility, hope, and equity across our schools and communities. Rooted in the principles of what Jeff Duncan Andrade called critical hope, we work together to amplify the narratives grounded on the Latinx Education Collaborative verticals of home, heart, and humanity. We have crafted these stories so we can share them with you in order to build a more empathetic, inclusive, and equitable world. So each storyteller has a set of their experiences, their own identities, and I'm excited that today we get to hear from some of them. So without further say, let's take some care of some housekeeping. First, make sure you comment, whether you're watching us on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter. The comment section is there to show love, to show encouragement to our storytellers. Let us know where you're watching us from. Or if you're rewatching this, let us know where you're watching also. So if you're commenting throughout the night, we can bring on comments like this. If you're showing love to your friends, to your the person you are here supporting, we want to hear from you. Our storytellers are backstage, so they can hear. So that's why it's important for you to make those comments. We have somebody from Utah. Shout out to Utah. But without further say, let me welcome the first storyteller. Let me let my backstage person to get the small video ready. But yeah, we will get to hear from Jenny Vasquez Garcia. So here you go.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. So excited to share my story. We worked really hard on our story. So here it goes. La comunidad nos cuidó. Let me paint the picture of my childhood. My mom would wake my siblings and I up at 5:45 in the morning, Monday through Friday. Nos alistaba con nuestro uniforme escolar. We always looked our sharpest. Después caminábamos a la casa de nuestra babysitter. El nombre se me olvida por cómo nos trataba. Mi mamá trabajaba hasta las 4:30 de la tarde y para las 5:30 yo me fijaba hacia afuera para ver si ya había llegado, ansiosa por verla y estar en casa con mi familia. Las horas en la tarde con mi familia eran cortas, pero los recuerdos eternos, haciendo tarea, comiendo en la mesa juntos, mi papá Darío, mi mamá María, mi hermano Mike, mi hermana Mariana y yo. También recuerdo watching the sunset al terminarse mi partido de fútbol. Why did I feel compelled to revisit this particular chapter of my childhood? I needed to heal from those moments of sadness of not being with my parents. I needed to heal from the anger I had towards my babysitter, for other than my siblings and I, by sending us to the cold porch or the dark basement and feeding us cold foods while her own children got chilaquiles or pancakes for breakfast. But more importantly, I needed to heal and see where La Comunidad has stepped in to support my family and I, so I could share a different story with little Jen. A part of the second generation immigrant story that often gets forgotten is that the extended family lives in another country. Los abuelitos están en nuestros corazones y en nuestras vacaciones. I am blessed that I could visit them in Mexico durante el verano. Pero the extended family is too far to care for the children during the school year. And here is where La Comunidad steps in to support. La Comunidad, los vecinos, the babysitters, the coaches, las maestras, y los maestros. I needed to understand that the future that my parents were able to provide me with was because La Comunidad nos cuidó. The sacrifices my parents made, the sacrifices that we made, eran para salir adelante. I found my safe haven in school. Oddly enough, even though the curriculum didn't speak to me and none of my teachers looked like me, I thrived. Maybe it was because the staff were the caring type, and I was a well-behaved girl who spoke English. I was forced to since my principal told my parents that they shouldn't speak to me in Spanish because otherwise I would never learn English. I listened, stayed in line, wore eyeliner only one time because I got in trouble and was pulled out of the line. I did what I was told. Maybe this is why I didn't know that I had the power to change the world until I got to college. So school was my safe haven. I preferred school to my babysitter's house. I stayed after school for soccer, speech contests, tap dance, cheerleading, student government. The list goes on and on. Any after school opportunity, and I was there. Thank you, maestros. Thank you, maestras, for working longer hours so I could explore many opportunities. La comunidad nos apoyó y mis padres pudieron darme un futuro mejor. Por trabajar, mis padres pudieron comprar no solamente una casa, sino dos. Por trabajar, podíamos ir de vacaciones a México y ver a nuestros familiares. Por trabajar, little Jenny pudo ir al trabajo de su mamá for Take Your Daughter to Work Day. Nos íbamos en the Orange Line al centro y llegábamos a McDonald's por nuestro desayuno. Después subíamos al séptimo piso del Merchandise Mart, donde saludábamos a todos los coworkers de mi mami. I was radiating because I was with my mommy. Después me ponía a hacer algo para ayudarle a mi madre con su trabajo. I would staple papers or do something really, really important. Until it was lunchtime when I got to walk around downtown to find a restaurant with my mom. I hope these memories never escape me because they truly are some of the most beautiful memories. Time with my mom. As I put this chapter down on paper, I am healing. I feel my spirits lifted. I am radiating. I want little Jennies to know that their sacrifices are para salir adelante. Your parents are working to give you the best chance at choosing your future, choosing when you work, choosing who you work for, choosing where you work. A future that not only sustains you, but gives you inner peace. A future that fulfills your heart, your mind, and spirit. School community, you have the power to be a source of love, light, and care for little Jennies. Use those hours with them to teach them to think and question, pero también para darles ternura, amor, y mucha paciencia. They're resilient kids and absolutely amazing, pero they're kids. Teachers, remind your students that their journey is beautiful, that their sacrifices are assets, that their journey is integral and will allow them to flourish, that their journey is allowing them to continue flourishing, that they are thriving, that they are radiating. I am proud of my family and our sacrifices. I am proud of who I am. I am proud of my past. I am proud of my story. Putting this chapter down on paper, I healed. I feel my spirits lifted. Little Jenny is radiating. Thank you. Oh, you're on mute.
I do need that t-shirt, Delia. Let me show you some of our comments that people have left for you.
Oh, gracias.
Delia, she's she works also with us for the LEC, and she's from proud from Chicago as well.
Thank you all.
Your story, it's really positive. That's why I really enjoy whenever you tell your story. It just reminds me of being in community in Mexico también, con mi familia. And it tells me that our students need community. Like you said, they need adults that really care for them, even small little moments. Is there a storytelling principle that you carry with you or that you will carry with you moving on?
Sure. I think for me, something that really stood out was a sense of reminding each other of our humanity, and how important it is to elevate our stories so that we can humanize our kiddos, right? Like our kiddos they're resilient, they're strong, they're brilliant, they're so smart. But sometimes I've seen that folks in our spaces lose sight of that because they're so worried about oh my God, no llegaron a tiempo. Oh my God, no, they don't know they're at this level of reading. It's like, but they're kids, they're resilient. See the full humanity in them. So I know that for me, that's something that I will continue to carry and share.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for sharing your story. I'll see you backstage. Salvador or Sebastian. I keep calling you Sebastian. Salvador. We have our next storyteller ready. Are you ready? Okay, she is ready. So let's hear from Anissa Abrego.
Hello, everybody. I'm Anissa Abrego, and here is my story. When I look back on my journey, I know who I have to thank for who I am today. My three mothers, my grandmother, my godmother, my tia, and my mother. In my most joyful memories, they are there creating or supporting the joy unconditionally. Even in some of the darker moments, they were there picking up the pieces. Their homes have never lacked love, and much to my own benefit and the benefit of my brothers, that love has almost always overpowered the difficult moments. When addiction led to unpaid bills, uncertainty around basic needs, and domestic violence, my aunt and grandma were always there to help out financially, even if it meant thousands of dollars in credit card debt. Don't tell my grandpa. My mom was always right there to somehow ensure we were still well fed and attempted to distract us from the rest. Perhaps it was because of their own trauma, both what we could witness and what would remain unspoken, that they knew exactly how they wished to collectively raise us all. I'm incredibly blessed to have experienced the rays of love and hope that managed to break through even the toughest of clouds. When I think of my journey, I do think of the bad, how could I not? But more than that, I think of my grandma's arroz con pollo and of the tacos de frijoles con queso that she packed for us at 4 o'clock in the morning before our long drives to Six Flags. I think of our yearly trips to Sears, Bells, and JCPenney, where she'd take on debt just to make sure that we had outfits for school. I think of her consejos. Wait till he's sober, mija. He won't listen now. He won't remember. I think of the consomme stained Tupperware I used for my school project in the 2nd grade. I think of her undying love for all of us, imperfections and all. I also think of my tia's jokes, endless advice, and pop culture knowledge. I think about how I've never made a big decision without consulting her first. She has laid the stepping stones for a path that I'll continue to pave for our future generations. From being in clubs in high school, being the first person to attend a 4-year university, to being a homeowner. Finally, I think of my mom. I think of how she always made sure we ate as a family, setting out a plate for my dad, even if she knew he wouldn't eat it. I think of her running around from work to wherever the 3 of us had a game or practice that day, making sure we were always involved in something, even if we were late most days. I think of her managing to keep us clothed and fed and with a roof over our head, even when the money disappeared overnight. I know my father worked hard to make up for the money that was lost, but it was my mom who put all the pieces back together. Most of all, I think of how much they all had to give up just to make sure that their family never went without. My grandma had to drop out in the 6th grade after her own mother passed away. She quickly took on the traditional role of mother of the house, taking care of her siblings and her father, cooking and cleaning for everyone in the house. Still, she became a CNA and did this until she retired. She worked hard her entire life, enduring loss after loss, struggling with 2 children who struggled with addiction well into adulthood, picking up the slack when they fell short with their own families. Despite all of these hardships, she showed her grandkids all the love in her heart. My aunt excelled in school and was the first in our family to go to college. She ultimately had to forego completing her undergraduate degree in psychology to raise my cousin on her own. She, like my mom, had to deal with financial loss at the hands of her brother's addictions. My mom wasn't allowed to live out her goals of either attending college or going to police academy because my dad wouldn't let her, belittling her ability to do either. She endured physical and emotional abuse almost daily, as well as struggled with the mental stress of how bills would be paid and when my dad would come home. Although these are all things that happened to them, the rest of us bore witness. We watched as they turned their struggles into success. From them, I learned how to cope, how to bounce back, and how to make do. While most of this has described their stories and the adversity that they've had to overcome, it ultimately makes up my story. Every little thing they endured led to the decisions they made and how they came together as a community to raise the 4 of us, my 2 brothers and my cousin. Their actions have guided and influenced every bit of who I am today. Their ability to find joy, love, and fulfillment is what pushes me forward every single day. For me, this storytelling experience has been therapeutic. I was able to grapple with some of the trauma that I've endured while closely recalling the way that these 3 women constantly laid the foundation for me to be in a position where I could change the narrative. I didn't want to continue seeing my story as one of struggle, but rather one of joy and love. Luckily for me, I had my grandma, my aunt, and my mom always showing me examples of how I could do just that. You are muted again.
Man, I bet you. Okay, next one, I won't be muted. No, I really enjoy your story. It's a story of Latinas Poderosas and how you will continue that legacy. I do have a question because it relates to it, but what does engaging in storytelling as a practice of freedom mean to you?
I would say probably that last piece of just like, I feel a little bit more free in knowing that I control my narrative. Again, these 3 women that I talked about have given me every single tool I need to be able to do that. But instead of, allowing outside perspectives to kind of overshadow or just like consume the way that I see my own life and my own future, this storytelling process has allowed me to, without any outside like noise or input or anything, just think about how I feel about my experiences and the experiences that have led to this point. And in that way, I've been able to change the narrative both in like how I move forward, but also change the narrative in how I see my own life and my own experiences, I guess. And in that way, that feels freeing.
Yeah. No, your story is a story of courage. And I think somebody, let me bring the comments because somebody mentioned that. There it is. So if you are watching, leave us comments where you are from. If you have questions.
I'm from South Texas, so whoever's from
You
Texas.
are from Texas, yes. So yeah, leave us a comment, leave us questions. Thank you, Anissa. I'll see you backstage. Okay, we are almost to the middle of our storytelling showcase. Up next, we have Melissa Jimenez. Dr. Jimenez, she serves as the recruitment coordinator at Johnson County Community College. Her current research centers on exploring the impact of systematic inequities of undocumented students accessing post-secondary education. Melissa is a first-generation student, and recently she just earned her doctorate in higher education with a specialization in community college leadership from Northern Illinois University. She is currently a co-chair for KC BizFest, and she's also a co-advisor and hosts the annual Diversidad, which will happen this September. Hopefully you can attend. She also enjoys reading and spending time with her husband, 3 children, her family, and her dog, Bilbo. Oh, Bilbo, he's still alive, around. Nice. So, I brought you earlier, but yeah, that really surprised me. Bilbo, how's he doing?
He's doing good. He's doing good.
Okay, let me do the proper introduction with your intro, and yeah.
Hello, everyone. So I'm just going to jump into my story. I love shopping at Whole Foods, looking at the perfectly positioned organic, fair trade, sustainable produce, variations of non-dairy milks, and ingredients that attempt to mimic the ingredients I grew up with as staples. I spend way too much time there, and find myself frustrated at how much I spend, how the foods I grew up with have been commodified, but I keep going back when I can argue away why I shouldn't shop there. I have this thing. I want to prove to the frequent shoppers, to that entity, that I also deserve to be there, that this grocery store isn't a foreign concept, that someone like me, someone that lives where I live, someone with my identities can also push the tiny cart down the aisles where the organic produce and color-coordinated cold-pressed juices are neatly displayed. When I was 6 or 7 years old, my first-generation U.S.-born migrant parents moved from Southwest Kansas to the big city. I was born in a small town with a population of 1,200. My community was largely Latino. I learned to speak Spanish first and often spent my no-school days with my dad as he weighed corn on giant scales, and I watched the corn fall into the grates of silos. My parents made sure I had access to books, and when they could afford it, the occasional hamburger from McDonald's. The first day that I walked into my new first grade class in the big city of Kansas City, the teacher required me to read aloud from a book to determine which reading group I belonged to. I remember standing near her desk, surrounded by the face of girls that would later become part of a friend group that I desperately thought I needed to be part of. My first grade teacher from my hometown had sent a letter of recommendation of sorts, with my parents to share with the new school, sharing a bit about me and my skills. I often had to answer weird questions about what they assumed would be in my lunchbox. No, not a taco, just a sandwich like everybody else. Even at that age, I just wanted to recreate the safe space that school was for me, not one where I had to prove or justify my presence. By the way, I ended up in that top reading group. I currently work at a community college that is a primarily white institution. And when I was hired in the role of diversity recruiter, I grew up in Wyandotte County, and the stark contrast to Johnson County cannot be ignored. This suburban county is one of the wealthiest in the country, and its residents resemble the makeup of the institution where I work. It was not uncommon for colleagues to ask me where I lived. I was not ashamed, but am very proud to say that I'm from Kansas City, Kansas. But the reactions from those asking was not easily disguised. The comments of, "You speak English so well," or asking about my husband's profession. "He works with granite." And I tried to hold in the laughter when somebody asked me if he majored in geology, because duh, right? You should know that I'm so proud of him. He's a first-time college student, enrolled in his first class last fall. My first few months in my job were filled with these experiences that were intended, whether intentional or not, to remind me of how different I was. In my current role, I have the honor of serving as one of the co-advisors for the Latino Student Organization. I host an annual conference that focuses on the recruitment, retention, and completion of Latino students, and I unofficially became the expert on Latino students. I was hired a month before DACA was opened in 2012, and I quickly learned and sought out the information to support undocumented students. I am bilingual, and that information quickly spread across campus, and I became the unofficial translator and the go-to for Spanish-speaking students and families. Once again, I found a haven in a world that I felt didn't have space for me, all of me. My husband was undocumented for many years. We were young and spontaneous and decided to get married at 18. I learned to navigate a world where we had to be extra careful, and the fear that he'd be taken away from me and our then 2 children terrified me. But I had a lighthouse. She's my mom. She recently passed away, but everything that she poured into me helps anchor me. Throughout my career and my doctoral research, I stumbled into a theory that has put into words what I try to embrace as an equity-minded leader. Carlos Aguilar, learn his name, read his work, developed the emerging undocucrit theory. One of the tenets speaks to acompañamiento. While this theory is specific to the undocumented community, this word, this idea, was a light bulb moment for me. This is the type of leader I want to be, not walking ahead, thinking I know the way to lead others, but alongside as we figure it out with the people that we want to serve. My mom didn't have a college degree, but she was tenacious, stubborn, kind, and loving. I successfully defended my dissertation months before she passed away. Mi reina, you finished the paper you were writing. She believed that I belonged in all the spaces, that nothing was out of my reach. My heart lies in student services and programming with a DEI focal point. The countless families and students that I have worked with have taught me lessons and have helped shape how I function and approach challenges and opportunities. Maria Fernanda Curipet Diaz, Alejandra Garcia Brenes, Jocelyn Nino, the first 3 Latinx undocumented college students, I share this with their permission, that I have worked with have forever changed me. Maria and her magic minivan, she is bold and speaks hidden truths that academia wasn't ready to hear. Ale, a future doctor, she'll get there, I know it, leads with her convictions. Jocelyn, a free spirit that now has her master's in counseling, I walked alongside them to learn. There are days where I still doubt where I belong, and I had a realization that I have even put these restrictions on my dreams. It's about time that we stop waiting for a seat at the table. This misconception further feeds the idea that I, or you, or who we serve are still waiting for an invite. Maybe we dismantle the whole table and the chairs. As a first-generation student and a Latina with a terminal degree, I make up a very small subset. My lighthouse, the first person that walked alongside me, was someone that didn't have it all figured out. She advocated for me, prayed for me, believed in me. If you are a decision maker, if you have decision-making capital, walk alongside your community. Lead from acompañamiento. Whether I'm pushing a cart at Whole Foods, at the Mercado, or in the ivory tower of academia, even though I'm still working to believe that I should be there, I am here because of the people que me acompañan. And I heal from those moments and experiences that made me believe I didn't. So now I do the same. I invite you to walk alongside me, walk alongside your community.
I'm on mute.
Yay.
Here's the people showing you love. There it is. I don't have a question. I just want to say that I really admire, because we both worked at JCCC and we both have lived through what you just explained, and you still hold it down for the students, for the future, because you really care about those students and the programs that they are creating. They are doing amazing things. I've seen what Luna is doing. So yeah, kudos to you for creating that acompañamiento for those Latino students in Luna.
Thanks.
But thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you.
Mhm. Okay, so now we have, well, before we keep going, I want to remind you that we want to hear from you. There's a feedback QR code. It's also a bit.ly. So take time to get your phone out, head on over, and leave us your comments, leave us your opinion. We want to know if you want to hear more stories from our educators, if you want to see more in-person events, more virtual events, if you think my hair is too long, I don't know. But yeah, go into the QR code and then let us know what you think about our programming and how we can keep improving and offering you the best programming and the best workshops that we can for you. Up next, we have Anastasia Delgado. She has been with us in several occasions. Even the most earliest one was last week, where she participated in our Orgullo story circle. Anastasia is a first-generation college graduate from Hutchinson, Kansas. Currently, she's an 8th grade ELA teacher at can't say this, Eisenhower Middle School in Kansas City, Kansas. She's passionate about amplifying the voices of underrepresented students and creating an equitable and inclusive work environment for all underrepresented educators. As an educator also, Anastasia centers her classroom around her students' identities and provides them with authentic opportunities to express their experiences. So without further say, I'll leave with you, Anastasia Delgado.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. Here's my story. I've gone all of my life observing in the room, but never at the table. As a younger person, I had friends and had a decent enough relationship with my parents, but I always felt out of place. I was different and just didn't seem to fit entirely, so I'd adjust, do my best to fit in, but still really uncomfortable. I wandered through school, making it my way to high school, and I can recall my first honest thoughts about my sexuality. Deep down, I knew I was gay, but I didn't want to be. I went to a Catholic high school, and this just was not going to fly. So I threw myself into religion. I had decided I was going to become a nun. Again, I'd found myself adjusting who I was, and still, even with my newfound discovery, I felt like an outsider. My decision to become a nun had ushered in new friends and a new version of myself. I fit in more than before, but still, I was outside, observing. High school came to an end. I had opted not to go through with becoming a nun. I think I finally realized it wasn't going to make me any less gay or any happier than I already was. I was lost after high school. Everything that used to make me feel important didn't really matter anymore. I had no idea what I was going to do. I opened up my heart to people who didn't have pure intentions. I was flailing, trying to create a version of myself that could get me through this phase of my life. But nothing was working, so I looked around and I questioned, who has the life I want and how did I get it? Andrea, my aunt, did, kind of. She went to this small college and had a great experience. I was desperate for change and convinced myself that I would love this college despite knowing zero about it. I applied, got in, and Heston College was my next stop. This is the scariest thing that I'd ever done. I knew nothing and no one in this new place other than that it was a fresh start. No one knew me. This was my chance to be myself. Here, I was going to allow myself to be out and somewhat proudly queer. I felt myself become this person that wasn't observing as much, but I was still outside and I felt unsure of myself. But compared to before, I was more sure than previous. Time went on. I moved to K-State and had yet again recalibrated who I was and was finally starting to get in my groove. Until January 27th, 2015. I was in my favorite English course with a professor who pushed me and saw past my attempts to dim my own light. My phone was on silent. I didn't hear or feel the vibrations of 20-something missed calls. I happened to look at my phone, missed calls and texts from my mom, sister, grandparents. I excused myself to the hall and called my mom. In my gut, I knew what she was going to tell me. My dad had been sick for years, and I just knew that this was the call. It was. I left class, stopped by my advisor's office, and went straight to Wichita. When I got there, I knew this was it. I took the advice of a special lady in my life, Rachel. I spent some time alone with him, told him I'd be okay and everything else I could think of. I took in his smell and did my best to remember everything I could about how he looked. I took my dad's hand in an attempt to comfort him, a moment of role reversal that came way too early, and told my dad I would be okay. I kissed his forehead and told him if he was ready, he could go. My body would not allow me to stay in Wichita that night to wait at the hospital for the inevitable, so I left. I drove back to Manhattan despite the complaints of my entire family. As I arrived in Manhattan, I was praying, asking God for a sign that my dad was going to be okay and would stay with me long after his body had left this earth. As I drove, a red tow truck seemed to come out of nowhere. My dad drove tow trucks when I was younger, and he loved it. Coincidentally, he drove a red one. This red tow truck stayed with me to my destination and pulled up near me. I thought in my head, Dad, if this is you, thank you. I'm good. You can go. A few moments later, the red tow truck backed out and disappeared into the night, towing away my denial, but leaving behind my grief. My dad passed away the following morning on January 28th, 2015. Every sense of self I used to have, every belief I had about who I was gone. I completely forgot how to be a person when my dad died. He took with him such a large piece of me. I spent the rest of my time at K-State relearning how to be a person. I was trying to figure out who I was again. By the time graduation came, I had an idea of who I was, but I had zero ideas of what I wanted to do. Here I was again, observing in the room, but not at the table, another version of myself. I received the opportunity to move to Kansas City for a job as a college advisor at F.L. Schlegel High School in KCK. Knowing no one, I took a leap of faith. I was at Schlegel in a space that felt almost right. I loved working with the kids, but this college advising was not the tea for me. I had finally gotten into the space where I felt almost there. This was the closest I had gotten to being at the table. I was observing, but I could feel something great coming. God bless Amber Buck. She was the one who told me about the teaching fellows in KCK. I had about a week to apply, but I decided to go for it. It was the best decision I ever made. I finally became a teacher. I'm finally at this place that I've longed of being. I'm at the table now. People want to hear from me. They like my ideas and my point of view is being shared. I have a seat at the table that I've earned, and I've left the door behind me for my students who inspire me daily. I am myself, and honestly, it's the truest and most unapologetic I have ever been, and I love it. I know the young Stasia who felt very out of place is beaming with pride. Ooh. That was a lot.
I'll show you some
My
of
student
the
Abby.
Yes.
Thank you, Debra. Yes, shout out Amber Buck.
Jasmine, we know Jasmine.
We have a Jasmine.
She's part of our family now, LEC family.
Okay.
Man, there's a lot. There's a lot. But while you read that, there's a question that says, what do you recommend for those young Anastasias out there that do not have those Tia Andreas in their lives?
Man. That person isn't always your aunt, and it doesn't always have to be someone close to you, right?
Yeah.
I think it doesn't have to be someone related to you. It could be anybody, right? You can find inspiration from anyone, or be a teacher. It could be a friend. It could be a colleague, whatever. As a kid, it could be someone else's parents. Who knows, right? I think just you kind of know when you have people in your life that are like there for you, can feel it. Trust that instinct and lean on those people in that time and realize that it might not be someone close to you, but it can still have a large impact, right?
Yeah, yeah. How do you envision using storytelling as we start going back to schools in the fall?
My English team and I, we're really centered on letting kids have choice. And I think through storytelling and realizing how truly tedious the task is that I ask kids to do, I think as I prep for school, I think what I plan is to add more space for those more authentic moments and those conversations to happen where you are able to like dive in deep into something. I think that's what I learned most in this fellowship. You mentioned it at the beginning that Latinos need space to be in community with each other. And I need to allow and create that space for my students, right? To be in community with each other because they're all the same age and they're all going through similar things. I need to create that space for them to do what I've done.
Yes. Oh, here's another. Okay, there's another question. I'll save it for the next one, but because it's time to move on and listen to Emily. Thank you, Anastasia. I'll see you backstage.
Thank you.
So up next, we have Emily Francis. She's a national recognized English as a second language teacher at Concord High School in Concord, North Carolina. She serves students in 9th and 8th grade with various English proficiency levels. Emily is also a native Spanish speaker who is originally from Guatemala and came to the U.S. as an accompanied minor. Her experience as an English language learner has inspired to become an ESL teacher and affords her a deep understanding of the challenges her students must overcome and find success. So now it's time to hear the story from Emily. So here she goes. You're mute.
You said it was going to be automatically unmuted.
No.
Not everyone.
Okay, I'm going back. Bye.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am so excited to have been part of such an amazing fellowship. Personally, I learned how to take my story and identify some key elements like my challenges, the choices that I've made to be able to create a change. So I do want to thank the fellowship for having me on. So some would say that storytelling is as simple as just talking about events, and somewhat I do agree. But I do have to disagree. Storytelling is a powerful skill that we develop once we've learned to embrace our backgrounds, our experiences, and then we acquire the skills to place effective elements of our story in the correct order. So throughout my life, I've learned to pick up the pieces of myself and then construct and define the identity I wanted to narrate. So here is a new narrative. I was born in Guatemala and I lived in Guatemala for 15 years. Beautiful time where I learned how to embrace my culture, my language. I learned how to cook. I learned how to celebrate so many celebrations in my country. I was a part of a small family. My mother is a single mom of 5 children. So as the oldest sibling, I was to take care of my siblings while my mother was working. And if I was not at home with the siblings, then I was at the market selling oranges. So at a very early age, I learned how to do business transactions. And a lot of the challenges that I lived in my country, some would say, ay, pobrecito, oh, look what she lived. But really, this fellowship has helped me realize that all of those experiences I lived in my country, all of those challenges are now stepping stones to build my own identity. So at the age of 13 years old, my mother left Guatemala, comes here to the United States so she can give her children a better future. I stayed back home. So we built a shack in a neighbor's backyard, and there we lived, all five of us, with just the essentials, while my mother was sending money for us to have food on the table, shelter over our heads. So for 2 years, I did the best I could to take care of my siblings. But 2 years later, with the money that my mother had saved, she hired a smuggler, un coyote. So el coyote llega, me recoge a mí y a mis dos hermanitas. So both of my two little siblings and I traveled here to the United States with a smuggler. And of course, you know, the idea that a stranger is going to pick you up, it's builds fear because you don't know who that person is. You don't know where they're taking you. But at the same time, you are built with hope. You have such a strong hope that that person is exchanging money in order to bring you across borders to be reunited with your family. So we held on to hope. And that hope is what kept us for 2 months with that smuggler until we made it here to the United States. 2 months later, I come to the US and I become an immigrant. Of course, I do get busted at the airport, and the paperwork began for me to be deported. But thank goodness my grandmother, who lives here in the United States, came over to rescue me, and I was able to begin my journey here as an English language learner. Now, my experience in school was not a very good experience. In 1994, I enrolled in Martin Van Buren High School. 1997, I become part of the statistic dropout of Latino high school dropout because I didn't pass the Regents exam. That in itself was a huge challenge for me because I did wanted to break some of the cycles, so the poverty cycles, and I wanted to go to college and I wanted to have a profession. But then instead of graduating, I was just a cashier scanning groceries. But it came to a point really years later when I had to make a choice. That moment when I told myself that I will define my own future, that really I needed to find that road from education that could help me change my narrative. And that's when I started attending community college to get my GED. And then I met Angie Power, a teacher who took me under her wing and helped me through my associates, my bachelor's, and now I am a teacher of English as a second language. And really one of my goals is that I can take my challenges and my choice for me to be able to make a change. Never would I ever have a student enter my classroom or my campus where they would have to put aside their culture and their language. I want my students to be able to flourish. I want my students to be able to tap into their potentials, to see their challenges, not as a shame or as a pobrecito syndrome, but also as a way for them to use it as a stepping stone to be successful. My mother brought me to this country so I can really enjoy what it is to be an immigrant, which is to make an impact in society. And that's what I want my students to do as well. Thank you so much for listening to our stories.
Thank you, Emily. I really resonate with your story because I was also an immigrant, and my favorite place to be, immigrant student, my favorite place to be at was the ESL classroom. My favorite teacher was the ESL teacher, Miss Laura Gomez.
Oh.
So Miss Gomez, if you're listening, we lost touch when I left the middle school. So, hey, I made it. I remember she would always say, you're fine, mijo, go to college, You're fine, you're fine. So hopefully I get to reconnect. ESL teachers mean a lot to students, to us. There's a question that I think you might be able to relate, to answer. What is the advice to educators who work with Latino students, Latinx students?
You know, Latino students, I really think they do want this space. They want the opportunity to share experiences and share personal stories. But at the same time, I feel like we need an invitation. I do feel like it, and it's part of our culture. You need to ask me. I never told my story until I got someone to ask me, tell me your story. So when I got the permission, when I was able to be invited at the table, then I poured out my story, and just really sharing my story gave me the key that I needed to validate my own experiences. So if you have students coming into your classrooms, provide those opportunities, ask them questions, mind their business. I really wish my teachers would have asked me questions about my experiences, and they never did. We do want to share, but we want to be invited.
We do want to share. There's more comments. Yeah, we love our ESL teachers. Okay, well, thank you for sharing your experience working with students. If there's any questions, drop them in the comments before we say goodbye to Emily. But we really appreciate you, tu vulnerabilidad de contarnos esta historia. Gracias. Okay, we are near the end. As you saw, Luis Ortega is waiting. Yeah, we have a surprise video from him, surprise words from him to our fellows, and also to you, our audience, that might be thinking of getting into storytelling, or you want to be a storyteller, but you don't know how. So also, before we go, before I say goodbye, take some time to take our survey, scan the QR code, or head on to our bit.ly also. But with that, I do want to say goodbye. Thank you for being with us. I want to say goodbye. The show will still go on with Luis Ortega, but thank you for listening, for trusting us in crafting these stories, and also story listening to our stories. It is important that we share our stories, because then people connect. And if people connect, then they might be living through our stories, or we might empower others through our stories. So it was a pleasure being here with you. And now let's hear from Luis Ortega.
Hello, everyone. I'm Luis Ortega, founder and director at Storytellers for Change, and I want to express my gratitude to the Latinx Education Collaborative, the 2022 Expresión Fellows, and to each one of you for joining us today to witness the powerful stories of this group of educators, change makers, and leaders. In my closing reflections, I want to tell you about the concept that educator Jeff Duncan Andrade calls critical hope. Without a doubt, at this moment, there is so much that we can be critical about when we think about the many injustices that continue to impact our communities locally, nationally, and across the world. And yet, in the stories that you heard today, in the stories that I witnessed unfolding as these fellows participated with us in this program, there is so much that we can be hopeful for. I fundamentally believe that every single one of us carries in our stories precious wisdom that comes from our ancestors, that exists in our traditions, in our songs, in the smallest acts of routine, in how we gather to share a meal, or how we choose to pass on traditions one generation to the next. It is in those stories that we can find all the reasons for why we can choose to love ourselves, for why we can choose to build strong relationships with each other, for why it is that we flourish in community. I believe that in the amplification of those stories, in truly reflecting on those three verticals of the Latinx Education Collaborative, home, heart, and humanity, we can find part of the crucial answer that will help us to build an empathetic, inclusive, and equitable education system, and by extension, a just world. At this moment, I am just so thrilled that I had an opportunity to be in this journey with this group of educators and Expresión Fellows. I continue to be with you in solidarity. We will work together to amplify your stories, and we will change the narrative.